Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Červená Barva Press reading series. And tonight we have three wonderful writers, so I'm very excited about that. Just an announcement before we start. If you don't subscribe to the Červená Barva Press newsletter, please leave your email in the chat. And we also have a YouTube channel, so please check that out. And it's under Červená Barva Press channel. And so let's get started. Our first reader is Tom Daley. He's the author of Far Cry, House You Cannot Reach, and Canticles and Inventories, and two plays. He has been published in numerous journals, including Harvard Review, Massachusetts Review, Vents, Prairie, Schooner, just to name a few. He teaches acclaimed writing workshops in the Boston area and online. Tom is the recipient of the Dana Award in Poetry and the Charles and Fannie Bay Wood Prize from the Academy of American Poets. And I give you Tom.
Gloria, and thank you for including me in this reading with such a couple of wonderful poets to read with. Gray Held and Doug Holder are poets I admire tremendously. I'm going to be reading tonight from my chapbook, which is called Far Cry, published by Ethel Zine and Micropress. I'll put in the chat where you can order it if you don't already have a copy. And this book is a collection of poems that I wrote after the sudden and unexpected death of a friend of mine who I had become estranged from. So the death was not just a shock because he died unexpectedly, but also because I realized I would never be able to reconcile our connection. So first poem is Obituary Picture. Your dear and dangerous mouth is open to the sunlight. In your perfectly white t-shirt and red jersey, you are a cardinal on holiday. No mistake that you boasted that the bishop who baptized you later elected a pope. Your teeth are touching. They might be grinding forgiveness or trust into a fine powder. You are the chosen vessel of an elixir that ferments the act of seeing into a love that scours, an infection that needles and cleanses. The angle at which your neck supports your skull leans your caution into the courage with which you withstand the sprightly chatter of the death wish. They called you the plant healer, but every fingertip that picked away the mealy bugs might later squish to soup the gnats that long to drink the wisdom from the fluid of your impatient and sun-loving eye. Gay blade, I think of you with your blister and your splinter. I think of your tongue, green with covetousness and love. I think of your teeth fixed on the good seasons, your breath with its ripening repair, your knack at incantations, planting the pleasurable sun. How delicate the skin was on your shoulder blades. Any fierce hug would set it astir with hurt fire ants, scrambling themselves into pockets and pores. Here, old contender, bring me your scalding sachet. Bring me your scolding sense of the proper alignment of recent trends and thermals and socks. Your eye always split between nasturtiums and hawks. Bring me your pie crusts, crumbly with stamen sweet or berry sour forecasts. Your weather, forever channeling itself into exhausted vessels that ventilated but barely furnished the corners and parlors of your cleverly marvelous yet querulous heart. The lost and found. The helicopter's propeller blades are battering the currents of the dawn. They are rifling for something, stalking the sidewalks. But it can't be you, caged in the crematorium. All your footfalls done for, all your slicing shade cataloged and chilled. How I still summon you towards me, that noisy joy, that winking and coruscating charm, moving like a suit built from feathers, lighter than bacon, steeper than the sky, with your hip sway girlish when you wanted it, then chainsawed under your timberline aftershave. You flounce toward me with your kindly abrasions, your mincing mischief, your sportive glee. In a club called the Lost and Found, how you held your head stiff as a 12-inch ruler, while your hips pepper-milled the disco floor, strewn with white-hot diamonds, your sneaker feet bouncing under the trampoline and the amphetamine of your smile. Infant of Prague. Climbing up the back staircase after our night swilling at the bars, you saw a paper bag squatting on the landing. You grasped my hand in terror and said, "Oh my God, it's an infant of Prague." Only you could have conjured out from that Christ child with the crown and the orb that the altar guild outfitted in different outfits for each liturgical season, purple for Lent, white for Easter, on a side altar of a Catholic church, out of a sack somebody had left on a staircase in the dim landing. Only you could knuckle my funny bones so, your hand curling up, your fingers digging into my wrist, as if holding on for dear life, while the world's raucous riddles and blasphemous hallucinations blew past us in a spasm of grimly glorious guffaws. Far cry. Though we couldn't hear it from where we lived, just north and west of us, the humid and eerie cry of gibbons imprisoned in the zoo hooted in rebounding ululations over the row houses of DC's Mount Pleasant. A truncated hiccup fused with the urgent inhaled coo of a woman trying to suppress the commotion of her passion so as to not disturb her neighbors. The cry repeated itself with the heft of a ritual syllable, accelerating, amplifying, crowding itself into the stolid mortar of the chimneys it brushed. It seemed to assert the primacy of impulse over deliberation, to warn that degrees of order are a fragile bulwark against the incursions of the whooping vocalizations of the hemmed in and the caged. Now, your gone voice cruises over the roofs of Northwest Washington. Your old sexual hunger hunkers its pangs between the zippers and the condoms. Your lips rummaging the air for downdrafts, for the rise from the cellar holes, for the good stink of the chimney shafts. A gray mouse has drowned. A gray mouse has drowned in the watering can. It wanted, like you, to try that last living thing to stave off a bursting thirst. I have composted it with the banana peels and the strawberry tops, among the toenail clippings and the split ends. There it revives and hooks your old gray-green towel on its hip bones and paddles up the back staircase to the shower we shared on Wyoming Avenue. There it greets me with your satin-bound grin, with your sheep ear, with your lynx chin gnawed to a glare. Hungry to redeem us from our old feuds. I sit on the edge of the toilet and listen to the thunder of your chortle and your crab. Your mouse self noses its aquiline way into my jocund expectation. And I shimmer the shower ions into a mirage of you wreathing me with the steam of an unalloyed joy. Second Tuesday. The moon lays its sheen on the neighbor's slate roof on the second Tuesday after your death. All the stone shingles pool in a circle of light. All your gone whispers are grinning me down. All your licked grimaces are ferrying me off to some speedway of flicker, snicker, and frown. Riding the long route of your emptying palms, you're still waving me down from the night, steering me close to the highway you row between mountains dubbed equinox and green. Over us both, the white and clamoring moon, dividing its spell from its curse. Over us both, the hot breath of goodbye, scalding our scalps and our wrists. I want to say that I loved you, and certainly I have. Loved the way you surveyed the sky, itching for news of the weather. Loved the way when I unfolded a joke or hurried you through a story, you'd hurl your head back and shake every clogged artery, shoving harder to uphold your laughter. But sometimes when you quieted, nostrils, fetching themselves into gray-blue smoke rings that lassoed my juvenile vanity and wrestled me to the unloving dirt. Fashion. You were embarrassed, no doubt, by my goodwill get-ups. 1 year later, you were still horrifying over the striped wool sweater I wore over a pair of cordovan pants with brightly colored threads popping like pimples. Another time, you picked disgustedly at the pills on a woolen pullover as if plucking a few of them would get rid of them altogether. I wore that with some high-riding, ill-fitting white jeans, and you wondered if I were wearing jodhpurs, as if I were off on some hunt with Jackie Kennedy and her set. How you loved her fashionably sunglassed-in sorrow, reconnoitering her grave the day after her burial with Bob, the eternal flame still fueled by all her late husband's dalliances. The gas piped in from the fracked out fields of an insatiable will to betray. I address the virtual impossibility of conjuring you with verses that are merely descriptive. Your hair was the color of river sand. Your glasses magnified your wide eyes. You seemed to be shearing beyond my pupils to some stash box in my brain. Above your lip, an acre often plied by mustache serious fingers. To the south, your snake with its blue jean hide was a fire break in the roughneck forest of your crotch. To the north, a khaki shirt and an impeccably white t-shirt you had probably ironed. There were always men in the woodwork, shying or splintering under the wide rabbit trap of your eyes. There was always a feast being prepared in the scorching pockets of your salivary glands, always a haunch waiting to be palmed, a genuflection waiting to be blessed. There's 2 more poems. Am I any closer? Am I any closer to a final embrace of the living ghost I have inspirited with all these verses and choruses of you I have set to shouting? All these reverberations from our shared era, all these dioramas of you with your loving and imperious sweetness, your gentle and your startle. Call my name with your confounded affection. Glower at me with your roguish admonishments. Catch your palms on the stubble of my throat. I cannot leave you to history, nor to the shameful extinction, to shuffle you into the extinction of a deck stacked with images that never maneuver you into the right hand. I send you off with the words of a pop song looping in my brain. Bursting behind us now, the Atlantic in late May. Your piggy on my back then, the 2 of us jubilant horseshoes brawling backwards into the foam. We crossed the Chesapeake at breakneck, spinning the long span of the bridge, the words of the Starbucks song, moonlight feels right, spangling our earlobes. Your smiles demure and murderously limbed with the caution we are tossing to the wind. All quirk and plenteous play, and never a dull boy, never a moment not spent in the delirium of your trembling wish to resound with the spritzing bliss of a wave and a cock and a fist. Always and every afternoon to fish and simmer in your barefoot glow. Never a time like this to know that the future will find us, but never let us go. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tom. Our next reader is Gray Held. He is the recipient of an Artist Fellowship from the NEA and winner of the 2019 Future Psychopoetry Prize. He is the author of Workaday, Spilled Milk, and 2-Star General. He teaches a weekly online poetry workshop and leads writing workshops for the Northeastern Correctional Center in Concord. His website is grayheld.com. And I give you Gray.
Thank you. And thank you, Tom. That was hypnotizing. The music was just phenomenal. Thank you. I'm going to be reading from a manuscript that yet unpublished. I'll start with some poems in the first section about my mom's sickness and death. Her first day in Rosenthal assisted living, she begs me to go to her local grocer. When I arrive, I see everything with fresh eyes. Dark-robed avocados, lemons with goose flesh, green pears with blush on their cheeks, stockades of pineapples, the spears of their opinionated leaves, day-old discount bananas flaunting their age spots in the bins, coconuts bearing stickers with instructions on how to pierce the eyes. Mom's losing her eyesight. Could hardly read the obits in the Times Dispatch this morning. I select 3 unbruised gala apples, bag them, place them on the dangling scale. The arrow jitters to the true weight of this occasion. Sugar speaks to my mother. Just ignore Dr. Roundtree when he makes the rounds, calls me the enemy, insists you unfriend me. He's too young to understand how life sours in the end, and you need my pleasantries. Tell him you tried saccharin, didn't like it. Aspartame, too cloying, the aftertaste it gives. Sucralose, a total no-go. You want me. You want the real thing, don't you, sweetheart? How sublime my bonbons are, and my twisted licorice sticks, so tempting. Next time Herr Doctor discovers your tongue thrumming a lozenge of my whorehound candy into a sliver of glass, tell him you're free to frazzle your own damn capillaries. So what if needle prick to finger proves I'm impossible to process? Help me put on those black boats, she says, meaning her ugly orthotics custom made. I kneel to these beleaguered feet, once masterpieces of anatomy that traveled in fashionable stilettos, barely trudging now. Fragile, can't stand on her own. Little body of trimmers and missteps come home to roost. Toes have always seemed awkward, untrainable cousins to our fingery agility. After nearly a century of being corseted by leather, her toes have restructured their calcium and their catacombs of marrow. I coddle her left foot. These 5 independent digits, now one compressed flock of flesh. I tender my empathy to purple-veined ankles, sad arches, nail beds beveled down. Help me put on those black boats, she said. Black boats evoke Charon, ferrying the souls of the recently deceased to the afterlife. Her feet are cold from the heart's reduced acoustics. I Velcro the left strap. I Velcro the right. Nothing lasts. I sit in a room, a bit bigger than a confession booth, smaller than St. Mary's Hospital Chapel, where you can light a candle for a dime, a quarter, or whatever you'd like to give for a flame that may last an hour or 2 at best, while physicians, radiologists, and the intern who hangs the glucose bag walks by in purple scrubs. The room, a hard-chaired affair, designed for hard conversations with the kind of doctor who brokers final bargains down to 1. My brother and I are prepped to make the deal, but my sister isn't. So as the dim sconce flickers, Dr. Sankar takes my sister's hands in his antiseptic hands, practice in aiding and abetting acceptance of the inevitable. I don't hear what he says to her because I'm distracted by my artificially sweetened Coke surrendering slowly, going flat, lifeless, but still conforming to the bodily shape of the paper cup that holds it. As my chest rises, falls with each breath, I think about angels and feel a tightness in my back where my wings would be. Seascape, Barnstable Beach for Jesse. Boy 1, boy with shovel. Here by the ocean's easeful azure, not far from where his parents parked their chairs, plunked the cooler. The boy kneels to dig into sand. He finds, to his surprise, water. Perhaps he thinks it's a hidden spring, his personal spring. His little hands keep delving down. The valley dug keeps caving in. Some physical principle he doesn't know yet sets the shallow limits of this alluvium soup. Still he persists. The caving in persists to fill him with frustration. The sun looks down to see how deep he's going, and the earth looks up to make sure he is learning something. 2. Punctuate the day. As a gull touches down, makes a slash in the water, flies up, underscored by flailing prey, the boy makes a sort of non sequitur towards the shore, picks up the red-white globe of a solitary bobber. The father comes within hyphenation distance of the boy, who ignores him, treats him as someone parenthetical. Off the boy dashes, riding footsteps for 50 yards, does a carriage return back to the margin of his mother, who all afternoon has been basking in the bold-faced sun, letting it asterisk and apostrophe her mind as she reclines, trying to strike through her winter whiteness to the copper coloration she desires. I'm going back to the hotel, she says, exclamation point. The father who earlier in the day lost the quote unquote his favorite sandals to the long languid lasso of the uppity surf says, okay. Having kicked off summer's top sheet, we canoodle. My finger is a toy canoe I float, up, down the length of Leslie's pink, slick rivulet that hails from her navel, almost to the place of sudden holidays and festive shouts of yes, yes, yes. It took time to extricate the scary from the scar, an angst-filled relic from when a fetal heart monitor went beep, 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 and wouldn't stop. So Leslie's belly parted like the Red Sea. Now a line from a Blake poem comes to me. What immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry? Her scar is symmetrical, about the width of the slim chance they gave for Zachary's survival, but not as long as the subterranean hospital corridor from the scalpel to the neonatal ICU, where our son struggled to write the intro to his life with the faulty ballpoint pen that skipped a bit like the beat of his heart, until a more upbeat chapter 1 featuring little joyful spit bubbles rippling on his christened lips and his heart transformed into a tiger burning bright in the forests of the night. Museum of Antiquity. O venerable mummy, stolen from a Nubian tomb, exposed to our blatant gazes, susceptible to capture by profligate pixels in our cameras, as curated facts about you are translated into 6 selectable languages sent by wireless to clandestine chambers in our brains. I love your name, Chibi, and your formal title, Count and Seal Bearer to the King of Lower Egypt. I treasure you too, Anubis, god of death, languishing in your cabinet, a cardboard label propped beside your sacred amulet. Surely those golden earrings hammered thin as bees' wings and those turquoise, lapis, and alabaster pendants must, under bulletproof glass and tucked in that thermostatic atmosphere, miss the scent of Egyptian skin. Seascape whiteness. Oyster shell beached clean. Any bestial skeleton. Moby Dick. Noah's dove. My wife's summer nail polish. Polka dots on her tank top. Face of my wristwatch. Terry cloth sweatband. Lifeguard tower. The aquarium's albino shark. Barnacles. Butcher paper at the fish mart. Straw in our pina coladas. Napkins. Clapboards of our bungalow. Old-fashioned enamel stove. Kosher salt. Surfboard stripes, picket fence, lettering on the nesting plovers sign, flowers of the beach rose, sticky sap from a milkweed stem, the unabridged privilege of my skin. Art exercise for kids at our local detention center. First, choose the palette for drawing on blank newsprint. Desert brown, crayon, plain old black, the beige that used to be called flesh. Start with the head, circle or no circle, the arms wide open or sidelined down. Tell them the flare of hair optional. Tell them make the eyes like two doors slightly open. Note to self, learn to say, have fun in Spanish, diviértete, amigo. If Carlos starts to cry, comfort him. Do not mention his mother, who's in another detention center. Have Jesus help his little brother, who's only got one arm. Tell them the way to unlearn fear is undocumented. Remind them the sky is not nothing. Remind them that if all the mango tango crayon is gone, any color at all can conjure up the sun. I'll finish with this poem that I wrote. My city, my hometown of Newton, became a sanctuary city about 4 years ago. I wrote this poem called Paper Store in a Sanctuary City. Paper Store in a Sanctuary City. If sketchy, if crumpled, mistrusted, dumped, if freezer burned by the cold assessment of those who shun others in their frosty hearts, if printing pressed, editorialized, classified, reclassified, or coupon clipped, if twice recycled, if traced and traced again, if gravestone rubbed, if totally repellent, unwilling to absorb what others think of you, if gift-wrapped gaudy or gift-wrapped plain, if legal enveloped and cancellation stamped, if sticky backed enough to stay around regardless, if yanked from a 2-ply roll, forced to be sycophant of someone else's spill, if a burnt page from a banned book or a page from God-given scripture over which so much blood's been shed, you are welcome here. Thank you.
Thank you, Gray. And our next reader is Doug Holder. Doug is the founder of Ibbetson Street Press. His poetry and prose have appeared widely in such publications as the Wooster Review, Spoke, Pandemic, Soul Lit, and many others. The Doug Holder Papers collection is housed at the State University Libraries at Buffalo. Holder has recently been elected as co-president of the New England Poetry Club. He has taught creative writing at Endicott College for 13 years, and for over 30 years, ran poetry groups for psychiatric patients at McLean Hospital. And I give you Doug.
I said these guys are a hard act to follow. I'll try not to embarrass myself here, but very accomplished work. This one is about my late wife, who died of ovarian cancer about a little over a year ago. It's chemo at dawn. for my wife Dianne. Her head arises like a small cradleless moon. Clefts of light mark the pale skin. She is an adorable Martian. Her hair has left her. Her head a sculpture, carved in bone. Tragic cardigan. Now it's time to let your paunch lay low in your grandfather's sweater. Take off the tight Italian leather shoes. Surrender to the ratty, vagrant slippers. You are febrile in your frumpiness. You try to muffle the invective in your head. Old man, shake a leg. And you would if it wasn't so painful. Now put enough pens, perhaps a pipe or two, the overdue phone bill, gnarled pencils in its deep sagging pockets. Perhaps sip a well-timed scotch and disappear on a wave with Miles Davis. Don't worry, no one will notice. An old cat chases an imaginary mouse. He still plays the game of cat and mouse, stumbling to and fro across the house to capture the stealthy phantom behind the brittle bars of his decaying teeth, the damp, dark prison of his mouth. The spectral rodent taunts the cat. He chases his ghostly prey, paws and claws in demented disarray. And for all of this feverish wanderlust, he comes up with a jaw of dust. Harbor Walk, South Boston. It was the smell, that briny, elemental sweat of wizened heart rock. Oh, my things are going crazy. Let's see, I'm sorry. I'm on the computer. Harbor Walk, South Boston. It was the smell, that briny, elemental sweat of wizened heart rock moss tangled up in green seaweed, the white waterfall splashing, abandoning its load in the placid canal. I had to stop the moment I smelled it. It was something that my father was drawn to. It righted his round shoulders, made his face crinkle with laughter. That smell, emerging from the vaginal portal, that spray of light slapping him with the doctor. That smell on his pleasuring hands, the troop ship heading to the coast of France, the salt adding speckled white and fright to his stubble. The smell, the sea, his beginning, the expansive horizon and the narrowing end. We spread his ashes far up the Hudson, but we know they would travel to the Seminole Sea, and someday that's where I'm meant to be. A veteran's back, Carson Beach, South Boston. There was nothing smooth about it, grizzled in a sea of sleek. Brown sunspots burst across his wizened map. A Teamster tattoo, his Union label blunt on his right shoulder. No New Age serpent snaking around a green fantasy planet. A depression in his skin where he took a shiv in some red light honky-tonk near Andrews Station. The muscles still asserting themselves below the slack skin, rolling under his flesh, his back unashamed of its sin. Blithering. An idiot, a drunk without a chaser, with blather, knows nothing that matters, some dull purple in polyester, talks from the side of a dribble, slips you a note, incomprehensible scribble. This one is about this woman who did artwork. I was reading the New York Times.
Doug, I have to interrupt you a minute. You're off screen and we can't see you.
I'm sorry. It's my computer.
Oh, that's okay. I accidentally put Doug as off screen instead of Doug on the chat. Anyway, thanks, Doug. Sorry, everybody.
All right, let me just try to get back on track here now. Where am I? Anyway, this artist, my computer's messed up. this artist did a whole bunch of Last Supper meals that people requested, and she did a whole series of paintings based on the Last Supper meals. This will be a little difficult. But so many requests for a feudal death row meal. One wanted glazed donuts, a sugar high before the lethal gas. Unabashed desire for some sweetness before it all went dark. Some lives end with two peanut butter cups, and a Dr. Pepper. Another demands a white perch that he caught in a river in Louisiana, remembering his father slapping his back. That's the boy. One even cried out, I want my mother's chicken dumplings, comforting dollops with white embryonic sacs, full of meat, those seminal bites of memory. Yet others want a clandestine shot of whiskey, straight, no chaser, a little of the hair of the dog that once bit him and bit him and bit him. One of my favorite plays is by Samuel Beckett. It's Krapp's Last Tape. And if you're not familiar with it, it's about a man, basically, it was in his late 60s, and he has all these tapes going back to his youth. And he constantly plays back that one moment in his youth. You know, he's tortured by all the pretensions he had about his art, and you know, things failed. But there was this one moment in his life where he actually was able to connect with a woman, and he keeps going back to that little point in his whole life that was truly happy. In the end, I became what was once a subject of my fascination, an old man praying over a tape recorder of memories, wincing at his youthful pomposity. In some dark, dank room, constantly trying to edit the mournful dirge of things said, unsaid, undone. To rewind, to hover under the sliver of light from the disrepair of a lamp, to listen again and again to that time she came to me, smiled, and her eyes finally let me in. This is about, I used to visit my friend in they lived in the projects in Howard Beach, Queens, and there's this Uncle Marty, who was sort of a shut-in, lived with his elderly mother, so I wrote a poem about that. Uncle Marty eats chickpeas from the strainer, greets me in a t-shirt and underwear, his 90-year-old mother in a corner in disrepair. I got no regrets, he said. I've seen it all. I've seen Bobby Thompson hit that ball. His mother says through her toothless smile, he was always good with maps. That's what they said. He always had maps in his head, so that's what they said. Manny scratches his crotch, takes another shot of the cheap scotch. Marty despises the family barbecues, wears a polyester suit to the beach, often spits and has a toothpick in his teeth. Yeah, he says to me as he glances out to the sea. Yeah, I've seen it all. I was there when Bobby Thompson hit that ball. You know, Bobby Thompson being he had a home run in the World Series for the Giants. Some people never forget that. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Doug. Can we give the readers another round of applause? Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight, and thanks again to the readers. Good night.